Think about someone who has supported and encouraged your growth. I'm not sure about you, but I can think of a few people over time that had a big impact on me. What made them impactful? What made your people impactful to you? Those encouragers were or are coaches to us. Everyone needs a coach, from athletes to professionals. Coaching for impact means we must be balancing relationships with knowledge and content to support growth. I am Shannon Peeples, and I am a current elementary principal. Throughout my 26 years in education, I've taught middle school language arts, social studies, and humanities, served as a curriculum facilitator, assistant principal, and district curriculum coordinator. I've taught in North Carolina and Shanghai, China. I have led in predominantly low-performing, highly impacted schools. In working with adults beyond the curriculum support roles that I've had, I have written and delivered professional development related to content and pedagogy, and I've been an adjunct professor. Years ago, my role was ending due to the grant funding ending, and I had to really think about what I was the most passionate about in education. Coaching is what came up then, and it has come up time and time again. I am a coach. If I had to sum up what I do the most of, I'd say I coach for impact. As the child of a Navy officer, North Carolina marked the 9th state I lived in by the time I turned 18 and moved to Greensboro for college. School had always been the consistent place for me. I was nurtured, supported, and challenged. No matter where I lived or what school I attended, I never doubted what I would do after college. I wanted to teach. I started my career literally around the corner from High Point University, though it was not what it is today back in the late 1990s. My experience as a beginning teacher showed me right away that all students didn't see school as I did, and it didn't matter what I knew, my students had to know that I cared for them authentically. To say I struggled is putting it mildly. By the end of my first week, I cried in front of my class. By the end of October, I was lining up a job outside of education, but I had a teammate that saw something in me, and she made me talk to administration, lean into my mentor, and work with her to work through the hard. Nancy set me up to have the support to make sure I could make it, and she's continued to follow up with me throughout my career. I've never been an athlete or coach in that manner, but I know the benefit of coaching and continuous learning, and I believe we have to consistently coach and support our students. The same is true of adults. Everyone needs coaching. As we talk about a lesson with teachers, we discuss before, during, and after instruction. We think about the gradual release of responsibility, so they set up opportunities where students are supported and can practice. The longer I serve in coaching roles, the more I see a parallel with teachers. As a coach or administrator supporting a teacher, I need to help them plan, do, and reflect. Consider the before, during, and after. No matter what you call it, there's a cadence to it. The piece that I see missing in the models, though, is exactly what we also say about working with students. Relationships matter. If you don't start with establishing a relationship with the person you are coaching, then the coaching will not be as effective, and you are not going to have the impact that you could. Dr. Rita Pierson said of children in her trainings and TED Talk, "Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection, and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be." She also said kids don't learn from people they don't like. I would argue when coaching adults, you can just as easily replace the words child and kids with people. People don't learn from people they don't like, and every person deserves a champion, a coach who will not give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best they can possibly be. When coaching teachers, they will not buy into what we are suggesting if we are not authentic, if we do not ask more questions than providing answers, and if we do not help serve as a mirror to reflect what they are doing in their classrooms. I think it's a simple before, during, and after with adults. Build relationships before, support in the way they need during, and help them reflect and follow up consistently after. It's not just 26 years in education, 19 in various coaching roles that helps me to see this matters. I asked people I have worked with, coached, and taught what they felt I was passionate about professionally. I was curious to see if I reflect what I intend with people. A teacher I coached 20 years ago came to us as the Teacher of the Year from her previous school. So she was not someone I thought I'd need to coach. She was already a rock star. She commented on, in her own words, my genuine care and professional advice, magnificent resources, along with genuine interest in her and her students. A peer I worked with as a young teacher commented on my enthusiasm, knowledge, and compassion. Another teacher I served as a district coach and then later as her assistant principal commented on the way I believe in all people and push for deeper connection. We are always learning. I talked to a colleague from Shanghai, China over 15 years ago, and he recalled conversations about encouraging growth and critical thinking through inquiry and reflection. While this was an exercise to make sure I wasn't going to do a talk on a topic I was not authentically living, it was also affirming to know that what I intended to be results were still remembered by those I worked with and coached as long as 20 years ago. I truly believe that consistency is key in assuring trust and thus establishing relationships. However, it can't all be about relationships, as important as they are. There must be content at the core. Keeping learning the focus and the children's needs as the goal, we have to have a balance in coaching for impact. The relationship must be collegial and supportive, and also one where the coach is not afraid to ask hard questions or point out where there are areas to grow. Knowledge is important. You must know what you are teaching, the content, but you also have to have knowledge of your students' interests and needs, the standards you are tasked to teach, the way students will be assessed, how to apply the best practices of teaching and learning to make sure you are doing the right thing for children. The same plan, do, and reflect is important as you coach teachers to teach their classes. They have to plan using data, standards, pre-assessments. They must engage in deliberate practice and have you or others model for them how it could or should be done. A teacher I went to college with and later coached when she was a teacher said what stood out to her about what I taught her was planning makes the difference. You have to be prepared on all fronts, content and classroom management, yet be ready to teach the children and not merely the curriculum. In planning as a coach, though, you must leverage the relationship you have established with a teacher. You must not follow a set routine and script. You have to approach each one differently. Some need you to model. Others want you to show how you do the planning. Others need to see how you'd literally stand up and teach a concept. Others need you to model how you dig into the data to plan, while some need you to ask them questions to help them extrapolate the information to make the best plans. During a lesson, as the teacher does, again, coaches must always think of those you coach as you would your students and prepare to meet them where they are. How do they prefer to be coached in the moment that something is not quite right? Do they want you to whisper in their ears if they're off track? Do they want you to signal them somehow? Would they prefer you hop up and co-teach with them to help steer the lesson as is needed? Do they want you to use a data tracking tool to see how they apply what you'd been discussing? Over the years, I have done a bit of all of the above for the teachers I have coached. Just like when I taught my middle school students, I always have a plan as a coach. I gather formative data as I monitor my effect so I can help them impact their students in the most positive way possible. After a lesson, reflection is key for teachers. However, many would just move on past that part because it's time for the next class or to go to PLCs or to head home. Years ago, during a cognitive coaching professional development, we were reminded that no one really wants to know how you, the coach, did it because it feels like you're the quote-unquote expert trying to make someone else into yourself. So I started years ago asking more questions than providing advice, and I started sharing things I had found to work in more generic terms, like in some classrooms where I have been, the teacher did X, Y, or Z. As the coach, you have to know your mentee well enough to know how they need you to share ideas or push them to think about their lessons. You have to listen for excuses or roadblocks they are offering and determine how to counteract those, while also knowing when to give them space. Ultimately, when you are coaching for impact, you are establishing a long-term relationship as you would a relationship with a family member or a friend. You must nurture it, and I say that because you don't always have an option to choose the relationship when you're a coach. When you coach for impact and balance having compassion for who the mentee is with what they know and must teach, you will question yourself. You will spend a good amount of time considering the most effective way to help them bring out the best in themselves and their students. To me, this is a sign that you're doing the right work. There is not a one-size-fits-all way to help educators impact students. As a coach, you have to balance leveraging the relationship you have established with what you know about pedagogy and content to help educators make the most difference. Jim Knight, founder and senior partner of Instructional Coaching Group, says, "When the teacher stops learning, so do the students." To continue to help students grow, we have to help our educators grow. As educators, we must model exactly what we ask of the students. Recently, I was in a room of about 200 other administrators in our district. As I looked around the room, I saw at least 14 that I had personally taught or coached as they were entering teaching. Not administration, but teaching. While I was not the only one who had an impact on their journey, I was part of the coaching team that did. As I asked them to gather to take a picture together, they commented on the difference our program and coaching had on them, how it started them on the path to make even more of an impact as an administrator. When we coach, we cannot always measure the exact impact on their growth, but we know we are part of the growth. I always told my students they were my students for life. I feel the same about those I have coached. I am always here to be part of their story. All can be put in positions to coach, but when you aim to coach for impact, you will balance your relationship with what they know and teach to become a part of how they approach teaching and learning for the rest of their career. What better opportunity exists than that?